All right. Hey everyone, so my name is Stefan. You all learned who I am. So I want to start with an introduction. Surprise, surprise. I guess our story as an organization isn't that unique, but probably relatable for a lot of organizations. Almost 2 years ago now, me and 10 other people founded Nevidimi, zhivotni. We were part of another organization for a few years before that, but over the years we saw that we didn't like it. We had cultural differences and values differences with a lot of the people there, and we tried to change things, but it wasn't really possible, so we ended up leaving and starting our own group, and that's how we are where we are now today. I want to start by giving some context about the country that we operate in, Bulgaria. It's an EU member state, one of the smaller ones, 6.5 million people live in the country, and we're the first country in the European Union. We have, for example, 2/3 of workers earning less than 500 euros per month, and we have also the highest income inequality in all of Europe, also including countries like Turkey. And the animal rights organizations that we do have are mostly for dogs and cats, and organizations in our line of work exist for very few years. And the word vegan is, this is what connotations it brings up in most people. It's the most successful media portrayal of the concept, and that's what animal rights activists are often associated with. So Bulgarians love their meat eating, they love their traditions, we're a very conservative society. And so that's the context that we operate in. So what did we do? I'm going to go over our story, the stuff that we achieved, and the bigger projects that we did over the past almost 2 years now. Just to give you a rough idea of what we've been up to, and then I'll go into why I think we were successful. So what we did within the first year after starting the organization was take part in 2 European Citizens Initiatives, or ECIs. The Safe Cruelty-Free Cosmetics ECI, to ban animal testing in the European Union, and Fur for Europe. And in both of those, Bulgaria ended up in 4th place across all the 27 EU member states by signatures per capita, and about 1% of the population signed on both ECIs. Although here I should mention that for Fur for Europe, 2 other organizations gathered the majority of signatures for the ECI, whereas for the animal testing one, it was practically only us. Within that first year, we were on national TV 4 times. We gathered 110,000 supporters, so emails, contacts in our mailing list. We gathered 1,700 single donors and 170 monthly donors, which at the time were contributing almost enough money for 1 full-time employee's salary. And we became the biggest organization related to animals or the environment on Instagram and TikTok in Bulgaria, on par with 4Paws Bulgaria, which have been operating in the country for almost as long as I've been alive. And to put that in a cost-effectiveness perspective, within that first year we spent 70,000 euros, of which 20,000 we fundraised from individual donors. So I'll go into the more notable projects that we did within that time frame. So in April of last year, we launched an influencer video where 10 well-known Bulgarian influencers with a total of 2 million followers between them across Facebook and Instagram were watching animal testing footage, reacting to it, crying, and they all published it on their social media as posts, not just as stories. And within the first 48 hours of publishing that video, 25,000 people had signed the ECI to ban animal testing in the EU. And by the end of the campaign, only on our social media, not including the influencers' profiles, the videos had 1.2 million views, and we had gathered 56,000 signatures. Again, in April of last year, we released an investigation into Bulgaria's largest and only mink farm with 130,000 animals that got published twice on national TV. And with it, we expected that our environmental minister would react to it because he was from the Greens, and also thanks to years of campaigning efforts from CAAI, the organization that we had left, he had promised way back to support a ban on fur farms in Bulgaria. And so, sure enough, he did. And shortly after we released the investigation, he published a decree banning the import and breeding of mink in Bulgaria. Unfortunately, right after that, mink farmers appealed in court, and so the ban is currently not in force. However, those political developments and drama made the topic much more interesting for the media and gave us opportunity to get a lot more media coverage and a lot more, to spread the footage that we had, which paved the way for a successful Fur for Europe ECI after that. And then fast forward to, that's me in the most watched morning news show in the country, talking about fur. And fast forward to January of this year, for Fur for Europe, we released this video featuring a former worker from the very same mink farm, where he described in visceral detail how they treat the mink, how they live and die in the cages of the sick, the dead, the injured, how they killed them in the gas chambers, and how he skinned them. Nothing like this had been done in the country ever before. There had been a few years of campaigning already on the topic, a lot of protests, and there had been an investigation released before ours in 2017. However, obviously this was a different perspective. It was an insider perspective from someone who had worked there and had actually been doing all these things that people had grown to be so disgusted by. It didn't have the same success as the influencer video in terms of the signatures that it managed to collect, but we did get fur on the topic on primetime national television for the first time ever, as far as we know, in an unusually long news piece. And for the month following the release, we had 3 activists giving interviews to the media almost every other day. That's the video being featured in the news. So now I'll go into my take of why I think we were successful, what factors I think contributed to our success. And I should say a few disclaimers before I go into it. First off, we didn't start from scratch. We didn't start from zero as an organization. We had, like I said, been working in another organization a few years before. So we had already some experience. We were already a tight-knit team. We trusted each other. And we had contacts from people abroad who were willing to help us. And most importantly, we knew the type of organization that we didn't want to be in. We knew the importance of culture and values. And crucially also, we received financial support from Anima International to start the organization, as I think a lot of other groups received. So what I mean by this is that I'm not so much giving advice about how to start a new organization, but rather talking about principles that I think apply and can be applied to any organization, no matter how old it is. So that having said, first principle, in growth we trust. So it may sound obvious, but what I mean by this is whatever we do, we think about how to do it in a way that grows the organization through it. And that is because the opponents that we are faced with and the things that we want to achieve, like for example the campaign that we're doing now, trying to get the Bulgarian government to support the ban on cages in the European Union, it's an amazing campaign, it's super important, super impactful stuff. But if we had tried to start that campaign 2 years ago when we were starting, we would not have nearly the same chances that we do now, because now we're obviously much bigger and have much more mobilization capacity, and are in a much better position to be able to make bigger wins and more impactful wins for animals. So in practice, what this meant for us over that first year was using other people's audiences, campaigning in a way that makes us grow. Obviously, that means collecting contacts and donations, donors, and gaining brand recognition, and being opportunistic. Now, what I mean by being opportunistic is that when we were starting the organization, the first thing that we did was sit down, all of us together, and start researching campaigns. Like, we had full freedom about what we wanted to work on, and we knew that what we decide to start with would decide our future, more or less, or at least in the short-term future. And very early on, we realized that the first campaign that we do didn't necessarily need to be something important or particularly cost-effective, but what it did need to be was something that we could grow the organization through. And so we very quickly noticed the animal testing ECI that was happening at that time. The signature collection was ongoing, and it was the perfect opportunity. It was a campaign that had a lot of emotional power in it. It was an emotional power bank. People felt very strongly about animal experiments, as we later saw in the campaign. So a lot of potential for public outreach. There was already a lot of public support about it. And at the same time, it was a niche that no one was really doing anything in. No one was really doing anything about the animal testing ECI or about animal testing as a whole. And it was a very simple campaign. We just needed to collect signatures. It was already happening. There was nothing else to be done except collect signatures. Very simple campaign message. And crucially, it was also time-bound. So there was a clear deadline, and it wasn't a commitment that we were making for an unclear period of time. So we chose that campaign. We got into it, but choosing the right campaign wouldn't have been enough on its own, because the signature collection system that is usually used in European citizens initiatives is this. I don't condone this particular ECI. However, it sucked for us because we can't collect emails or telephone numbers through that. The data that is collected for these signatures, we don't even get access to. It goes directly to the European Commission. So if we had run the same campaign but using directly the European website, at the end of it, we would have been, even if we had gathered this large number of signatures, we wouldn't have been any stronger. And if anything, the organization would have been weaker after investing so much resources into a campaign, and we would have been back at square one after the end of it. So to fix that, we had a website built around this official form as a wrapper, where you would land on our website and we would ask you for your names and your emails and your phone number, and only then would we redirect you to the ECI form where you could sign. And after you finish signing, we ask you for a donation so that you can spread the campaign more. And then if you didn't donate, we annoy you with emails, or if you didn't sign, and then if you want to skip the donation, we ask you if you're sure, and then we ask you for more donations. It's a very aggressive website, but we learned not to be ashamed of asking for these things, because there's no way around it. The organization needs to get stronger, we need to get bigger, we need to have more capacity, and we need to be strong if we want to be able to make wins for animals that matter. And so there was no way around it. And of course, that's also not enough. Having the campaign, having the good website that lets you grow through it, you also need to get the traffic. And we had 0 followers when we were starting. So it was crucial to use other people's platforms that actually had followers. And even now, and as we have a larger following on Instagram, we're pretty big, still nothing relative to the people that we got involved in that first influencer video. That, like I said, had 2 million followers between them on Facebook and Instagram. And without them, the campaign would never have reached the scale that it did. And of course, the reason that these people got involved in the campaign isn't so much that they cared about animals. Some of them, like that guy, for example, he did it only because his wife insisted. So it's not like these people are, like, from the bottom of their hearts, they really want to do this. It's more that the reason that it was possible to get them to agree was because they had also some self-interest in it, because the way that the collaboration was made, each influencer knew that all of the 10 other influencers in the video would also tag them. They would tag the other influencers and us in the campaigning website, but they would tag them as well. And so each influencer knew that they would get 10 other influencers tagging them, and they would get the followers of 10 other influencers seeing them, so they would get some of those followers to bleed to them. And so they gained something from it as well. Yeah, so that brings me to the second principle, which is my favorite. Just look at this photo. What do you think it is? We presented it to the media as hundreds of people come out in support of A Fur for Europe, which when you say it like that isn't technically untrue. However, 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after this photo, the square looked like this. We were on a cold workday morning trying to do a media stunt for the launch of our campaign. We had a couple of influencers come as well, but not so much media. Apparently, the 3-meter high fox isn't that interesting for the media. However, we noticed this huge tourist group passing by while we were there. And we saw that some of them were making photos of the fox, some of them wanted to go next to the fox and have their friends make a picture with the fox, and we saw where things were going, so we encouraged the group to sort of gather next to the foxes. We started giving them posters, and then we made this amazing photo that we later pitched to the media and got the coverage that we wanted. I'm not saying that you should be following tourist groups' schedules, although that could actually be a good idea. The point I'm more trying to make here is the importance of narrative and the importance of looking strong. I think narrative building is something that a lot of organizations overlook for some reason, but it is crucial. What is narrative? It's storytelling. It's people live and explain the world and explain themselves to the world through stories. People operate through stories all the time. And if you want to get people to care, you have to have a story about it. And the story is how we're going to get from where we started, where we are now, to the end goal, which is banning animal testing or banning fur farms or banning cages, whatever it is. It has to be a linear narrative, and it has to be with clear milestones, and it has to follow a few principles for it to be strong and compelling, and to get people to believe in the story, because once you get people to believe in the story, they make the story happen. So the things that are crucial when you're building narrative are, of course, looking strong. People like to be part of success stories. People like to be part of something that a lot of people are already part of. People like to be part of these things. And so it's crucial to never look weak. And it's also important to create moments in time. A newsletter is never something you send in a vacuum. No campaign is something that exists on its own. You have to think about what came before it, what will come after it in the story and in your communications, and it all has to be this coherent thing. For example, when we were starting the animal testing ECI, we had this microsite that we made. And in it, we communicated that this huge campaign was coming. The biggest thing that Bulgaria had ever seen. The most amazing, most huge animal campaign that the country had ever been part of is coming, and you can be part of it. And we had the countdown until the start of the campaign. We did everything. We communicated about this in post, even though we had 10 followers, our friends and our mothers mostly. But even from the start, we were communicating about this, about how huge and important it was, and you could sign up to be part of it, to be part of this inner circle. And that was the crucial thing, the crucial principle that we keep applying to this day. Make your supporters and your followers feel like they're part of this inner circle, like they're not just passengers on a story in which the organization is a hero, but rather they are the heroes. You don't want to be like that friend who always goes on these amazing vacations and describes about how awesome they are and says that you should come sometime, but then never actually invite you. You want to tell your stories from the perspective of your supporter, from the perspective of the people who are actually writing to the politicians, signing those petitions, giving those donations, coming to those protests. People power, actually making the stuff happen, because they are the heroes in the story, not you. Yeah. And I guess the third principle, not that new, I guess just steal stuff. Almost everything we did, we stole from someone, we're not that original, don't have much creativity. Although, to be honest, creativity is exactly this. It's looking at stuff that is already in the world, looking at stuff that has already been thought up, and thinking about new ways to combine it. So don't be afraid of stealing. Do it. It's amazing when you have consent as well. And it's also crucial to ask people for advice, because there are so many people that probably whatever you want to do, there's already someone who has done it, and that you can ask for advice on how to do better. For example, a lot of the principles even that I talked about, we got from Jiri Krupa, which is this Czech mobilization fundraising expert, who's really cool. I even stole this presentation. Shout out to Ilina, who did it in Oslo earlier this year. So yeah, stealing is great. You heard me say it. Yeah, also Animal Ask were great. We asked them to do some analysis to give you recommendations about what type of campaign you should be doing is most effective. We asked them for advice before we had finished with Fur for Europe, and they came up with the recommendation for the EU cage ban campaign that we're doing now. And as a bonus, fail. Failure is amazing. Do it early and do it often. All of these things we failed in one way or another. For example, with the influencer video, the cameraman that we had we got into some drama with him, and he threatened to delete all the footage after we had taken it with all of the influencers. So the entire thing would have gone to shit. So that was something that happened with that over there. We were doing, over the summer of last year, info stalls in the biggest cities in the country. We were trying to get people to mobilize to collect signatures on the street, and we wanted to do it in 5 of the biggest cities. We got 2, but then Elia from one of the much smaller cities that we didn't even plan to be having stall in wrote to us asking if we could send her the file for the flyers, because she was waiting for an order, but it wouldn't come on time. But she wanted to do it to show all of her school about animal testing before the school year was over. So we did that. She then sent us photos, and we realized, okay, but actually this is a person that can actually make something happen in that city. So we asked her whether she wants to do it. She did it, and she made the biggest group in the country in that city that we didn't even plan to have something in it, and saved the day, basically, from having that project fail. And the last thing with the rabbit, we were planning to go on tour with a rabbit costume to get some local influencers to make photos with that rabbit, spread the campaign some more. And we started going around that tour. No influencers actually were interested in doing that, and in the middle of that tour we all got sick with COVID, and we barely made it home. The car almost flew off the road. It was very scary. So yeah, but my point is, not everything you do needs to succeed. It can fail. A lot of the stuff that you do will fail. You should think about what you're doing more as firing a machine gun, where a lot of the bullets miss, but those that do hit do enough damage to make up for all the ones that missed, and not as a sniper, where every shot needs to hit or something bad will happen. So yeah, I guess that's it. I don't know if I was...
You made it in time, so I think we can start our Q&A session now. If you have some questions, please ask them. For now, we have 2 questions, first of which is, if you could go back in time and take into consideration all your knowledge and experience, what would you do? What would you do anything differently?
I should have expected this question. I'm not sure. I mean, I think the principles that I was talking about, we mostly applied them from day one because of that guy, Jiri Krupa from the Czech Republic, that was helping us and giving us this advice. So yeah, I think we did a pretty good job of following that advice over the years.
Okay, so nothing.
Yeah, I regret nothing.
Great. I like your confidence. How did you convince the people in charge to show the clips of your investigation on TV? Or what made them want to do that?
The media?
Yeah.
So it was already a topic that there had been some campaigning efforts over the years about, so it was not completely new. And also, as with everything in Bulgaria, you need to have a friend of a friend. Basically, got the phone number of the executive producer of that most watched morning news broadcast. We asked them if they want to do an exclusive release about it. They were all for it, and then we did it.
Great. Another question is, how did you get the influencers on board exactly? Were they paid?
They were not paid. It's documented somewhat what we did exactly. So if you want, you can reach out and I can connect you with the person that made it happen. But basically, in short, I guess, this influencer video, like I said, we stole it. It had already happened in Czechia. So we were reaching out to influencers and talking to them again about this huge campaign that was coming, this amazing thing, this never before seen animal campaign in Bulgaria, how great it was going to be that we're trying to do this thing that was already extremely, crazily successful in Czechia. They want to be part of it. We had a few influencers that we got on board fairly early on because we knew that they were animal friendly. So we were also mentioning them, like these people already agreed to take part. It would be great if you also join. You know, same principles, you know, making it seem like it's successful, like it's happening, like there are already other influencers, other people who are part of this project, so that you create fear of missing out as well. Yeah, and we also wrote to 150 influencers, of which 10 agreed, so that's also a thing. Yeah.
Okay, that's how it works. And back to the media for a second. Was it hard to get media on your side? How did you approach them exactly? Just the phone call was enough, or did you have to give it a try?
For the investigation specifically?
I guess that's probably the hardest thing to get, so...
Yeah. Yeah, it was just that phone call. I mean, it was probably also luck, but... Yeah, I mean, I think it's also because Bulgaria is a smaller country. I know in the UK, for example, they have issues with getting media attention. It's much, much more difficult, and it makes sense because the country is much bigger. There's much more news, stuff that's happening there. In smaller countries, I guess you could have a lot of days where nothing really happens. So it's easier to get your story in the media. And yeah, in the UK, for example, there's also a lot of animal rights organizations. Like a lot of investigations have already been released. They're not so interesting anymore. Yeah, so that's also stuff to keep in mind. So
just fresh enough to be interesting.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
And then for the worker video that we got on primetime evening news, that was also because of contacts. Like when we were doing the mink investigation release, and we did some follow-up material for one of the national TV stations. I had gotten the contact of one of the journalists that interviewed me, then interviewed the minister. So I asked her, like almost a year later, we have something else, would you be interested? She said, no, unfortunately I don't work at that TV station anymore, but I have a friend who does, and she made it happen.
Okay, another question about the future. What are you planning to do next after the fur campaign?
To get the Bulgarian government to support the ban on cages in the European Union. By the end of this year, the European Commission will be proposing a revision of the entire animal welfare legislation of the EU. And part of that revision will be a ban on cages for all species. So that's the thing that we will be focusing on, super important stuff.
Yeah. Some steps taken already? Or?
Preparation, mostly.
Well, good luck.
Yeah.
And how did you convince Anima International in the first place to support you, especially as a new organization with a long track record?
Well, because we were in another organization before we started Nevidimi, zhivotni, we had opportunities over the years to get in touch with people from all over the world in the movement. We were also in touch with people from Anima International. We had worked with people from AI. A few times over the years. They thought we were effective and that we were good activists. And they like supporting new groups that seem promising. So they gave us money to start with no strings attached.
And do you have a person in charge only for media and communications, or do you always do everything as a group?
I mean, maybe we should. We have a few people that are the people for giving interviews and that we know are experienced and that are the go-to people for these things. My phone number is the one that is public, so I guess journalists would most easily get in contact with me, but we discuss like who should go and when, because it's also cool to get more people with experience, because when you have huge campaign moments, like for example the influencer video that we released, we didn't expect that we would get 25,000 signatures in 48 hours. It exploded immensely, and you need to be prepared for success as much as for failure. You need to have, like if 10 media outlets call you for interviews today, you need to be able to respond.
Okay, so thank you for your answers. Oh, we also have another question. So, what was Animal Ask's recommendation for future campaigns after doing the analysis?
Corporate broiler work, corporate fish welfare work, and as a third option, because they knew that those two are insanely difficult, they recommended the EU cage ban work. Yeah, so we chose that.
Okay, and maybe the last question already. Is there something you're afraid of for the future? Something you have to work on to be prepared for better?
Lawsuits.
Okay. That's enough of an answer. Thank you. We have no more questions, so I think we're good to go. Thank you, Stefan, and good luck in your organization and as an AROVS leader, obviously.
Thank you.
Thank you.